Hey everyone, quick announcement, GamerSupps is doing a big merch drop today, so if you're interested, you can check it out with my link in the description. Thank you and enjoy the video. Wanted is not the greatest of films. It certainly has its merits, mainly the action, and while not exactly culturally significant, it can still entertain, at least as a guilty pleasure. But being 10 years old at the time of its release, I thought it was the coolest thing ever made. Admittedly, I was a tad bit young to be watching that, and I likely didn't understand everything, but I loved the concept of secret assassins and bending bullets. Luckily, in 2009, there appeared a new outlet for my bullet-bending fantasies. Wanted, Weapons of Fate, product not yet rated. When I saw this in the game store, I knew I had to have it. And when I finally got it, I remember looking at the back of the box during the ride home, imagining all the possible gameplay scenarios in which to disregard the laws of ballistics. At home, I promptly installed the game and proceeded to complete it that weekend. Safe to say my parents were not happy about that. Okay, so the game was a little short, but the important question is, was it any good? To be honest, I can't recall much besides the basic outline of the story. Just like our race car compatriot over here, Weapons of Fate continues the story after the movie's conclusion, so beware, there will be spoilers. We of course play as Wesley, and before the campaign starts, we get a tutorial harkening back to Wesley's training at the factory.
Once I was clueless and pathetic just like you. Sitting in front of the TV, playing video games, getting fat.
What? Similar to the film, everything in this game is narrated by Wesley, who is no longer voiced by James McAvoy but still shares his likeness. If I were to describe Wesley in one word, that word would start with a C. That's right, a All jokes aside, the dialogue is really insufferable at times.
You fight well, Wesley Gibson.
That runs in the family, shit pants.
Chicago, my favorite place to snipe in.
Just to be sure, I rewatched the film to see if it was just as bad, and while that version of Wesley isn't exactly cool either, he at least gets humbled a few times or shows emotions other than the constant snark of his video game counterpart. Sure, the movie Wesley is lame and he's a caricature, but you at least sympathize with him to an extent. This Wesley, on the other hand, is just an empty vessel for Edge. Once the tutorial concludes, we're brought up to speed on the story so far. After the events of the film, Wesley wakes up to a break-in. We confront the intruders, who happen to be French people, they steal a document and we give chase. The game features a mix of cinematics and pre-rendered cutscenes, neither of which are particularly well done. Admittedly, this was 2009 and we're dealing with a tie-in game, but I'm not feeling very generous. Having completed the first level, we're finally introduced to the bullet bending mechanic. You have to get a kill to fill this meter before you can activate the ability. The game attempts to utilize it in a few different ways, but it ends up being pretty formulaic. At its core, Wanted is a pretty basic cover shooter, and being able to shoot enemies even behind cover disincentivizes a more active approach. Wesley moves pretty slow and lacks a sprint as well, which forces you to get behind cover, especially as the damage output of your enemies increases. Relating to that, earlier in the level, we also get introduced to these quick-time set pieces, in which you need to shoot enemies and oncoming bullets while on a timer. These are unfortunately the closest you'll be getting to the action scenes featured in the film, which is disappointing seeing as those were Wanted's main attraction. Back in the story, the game switches perspectives, and we now play as Cross, aka Wesley's dad. These flashbacks are fairly bland, save for the airplane level, which allows you to blow the doors off, sucking out the nearby enemies. Wanted really could have used more things like that to add some flavor to the otherwise basic formula. Anyway, Wesley finds out who's hunting him down. It's the same guy who killed his mother, called the Immortal, played by Peter Stormare. I have a sneaking suspicion Peter is required to be in a game every few years, or something really bad happens. In his pursuit, Wesley revisits the half-destroyed fraternity base, currently being salvaged by the French. After some more firefights, we face the Russian. Oh, you want to know more about him? There's no time for that. Wesley has plenty of stuff to say still. We need to get the quips in, come on.
Holy shit balls.
The bosses in Wanted have very little to offer, both in spectacle and challenge. They usually force you to utilize a specific technique to damage them, but are otherwise extremely easy to beat, and each fight is laughably short. At this point, we get another flashback, and this time it's the airplane level. Definitely one of the better moments visually, but still nothing to write home about. Back in the present, we fight through an office building, accompanied of course by all manner of poignant commentary from Wesley.
It looks like I'm gonna have to kill this pussy bitch from back here.
I'm gonna kill you, just for fun and a laugh.
How about you hold this?
After beating Brummel, we get a callback to the explosive rats from the film, in this case being used by the bad guys to destroy the building we're in. That's a very cool reference. Next stage is the last flashback, detailing how Cross was betrayed by Sloan. It also introduces a higher tier of bullet bending called Shrapnel Storm, which can take out multiple enemies if they are close enough or one-shot the stronger types. One thing that bugged me throughout the whole game was how temperamental the bullet bending mechanics were. Maybe I just suck, but sometimes what looked like a headshot would kill an enemy, and sometimes it just didn't. Additionally, the cover has a pretty wide hitbox, meaning sometimes you'll see a head poking out but won't be able to shoot it no matter how hard you try. Doesn't exactly help in making you feel like an expert assassin, just in case Wesley didn't accomplish that already. A bunch of stuff happens. Wesley fights the lady. He visits Cross's tomb and gets his guns, and finally goes to confront the Immortal at the Parisian Fraternity. Let me just show you these screens you get when you unlock new abilities, cause they're chef's kiss. By this point, I'm sure you've noticed, the game reuses assets and environments in multiple levels. This wouldn't be a huge issue if only the game wasn't 2.5 hours long. I remember it being short, but holy moly, that is not a good value proposition. The final level is the longest of the bunch, and features a section where you avoid sniper fire, followed by a sniping segment, and culminates in the cathedral, where you climb the bell tower to face the last boss. A new enemy type is introduced, but I don't care. The game is almost over, and I want it to be over. Before that, we get one last twist. It was in fact Cross who killed Wesley's mother, as to not violate the code, I guess. But the French guys didn't like that Wesley existed at all, so they still pursued Cross. Riveting. Unsurprisingly, the final boss is really boring. You have to use the bullet time cover change ability in order to hit him, and I just wish they had him curve bullets at you as well that you'd have to dodge or counter with your own. He's the only other character we see curve bullets in cutscenes, so why not have him do it in the boss battle? As expected, Wesley defeats the Immortal, but for some reason doesn't kill him and does this instead.
Yeah, that fits.
Where playing Wanted has not been the greatest experience. Unlike the film, which manages to look cool at times, Weapons of Fate is both mechanically shallow and devoid of spectacle. The plot I won't even mention. It's because of that Wesley's asinine quips feel so grating at times. It's an aimless slog that doesn't earn its edge at all. And ultimately, that's what I dislike about Weapons of Fate the most. It fails to capture the fantasy and the vibe while underutilizing the bullet bending, a mechanic that's almost tailor-made for video games. Tie-ins all inherit the same issue of being a companion to a pre-existing piece of media. They are, more so than original titles, made for profit and, more importantly, promotion, so creatively speaking, often have little reason to exist. That is why it's always a pleasure finding those who manage to use their platform to provide genuine enjoyment within such specific confines. In contrast, Wanted occupies the other end of that spectrum, and the only person I would recommend this game to is Wesley himself.
You killed my mother.
Hey, thanks for watching. I hope this video wasn't too negative. Not every game I played as a kid was a hidden gem, and I want to be honest about that when looking back. There's more to come, so stay tuned. If you want to support me, here's my Patreon. Don't forget to check out GamerSubs with my code if you want to get 10% off. And last but not least, a big thank you to my patrons. Anyway, here are some more videos, and I'll see you at the next one.
Fuck, I have to go.